I'm Jonny May from Piano with Jonny, and today I'm going to teach you what I like to call the one chord wonder. And basically it's a chord position you can play in your right hand, and you can play any chord underneath it, any pop chord progression, and it sounds amazing. Now, in most pop music, you have major and minor chords. You might have something like this. Right? Major and minor chords. And that's fine, but after a while it can sound a little bit bland, right? Because you're not really adding a lot to it. So the great thing with this one chord wonder is that it adds some really colorful notes to the chords. So you can take that same progression and now do it with this one chord wonder. Hear that color, that richness to the chord? We're also going to talk about different patterns, different ways to play this using, blocked chords, also arpeggiating, how do you separate the right hand? We're going to talk about the left hand, how do we play the left hand? Using simple things like root fifth, or really spreading it out and going for a larger sound like a 10th sound. And I'm also going to show you how to take this chord position and how to do an inversion of it, which is a little more spread out, and it sounds gorgeous with the tenths. Here's an example of that. And like walking movement in the left hand, sometimes you have a bass line where it's like, kind of walking up to the C. So some really cool techniques here. And also chord substitutions. That's another big thing, is sometimes in pop music, when you go to a chord like the 6th chord, which is usually minor, this is how I play it, but sometimes you can substitute that and use an inverted major chord, so you get this sound. Right? Just a little different sound. I mean, we can also use this on the 3 chord. Typically it's minor, but we can make this a major inverted chord. It has more of a, pretty kind of colorful sound. So some chord substitutions. And, if you're just looking to improve your pop playing, if you want to get better at like reading lead sheets, reading chord charts, this is going to be a really good lesson for you, because it's all about, pop chord progressions and, how do you play it in a really interesting and compelling way beyond just straight major and minor chords. So I think you're going to love this lesson. Also, this is for intermediate piano players. So if you're a beginner player, maybe you're on the late side of beginner, you'll be totally fine on this lesson. If you're an advanced player, you're going to learn a lot of great stuff from this lesson too. If you're a total beginner, if you just started, this is probably going to be beyond you. But for all other playing levels, I think you're going to have a good time. You're going to learn a lot from this lesson. Now, in this preview lesson, I'm going to teach you a portion of the course. And if you want to find the full-length course, you can get it on pianowithjonny.com. So let's go ahead and hop in. All right, this is the one chord wonder lesson. What we're going to do here is I'm going to show you the chord and a couple ways of playing it, and then we're going to go ahead and play some different progressions, and you can kind of hear and see how to form these chords. It's pretty amazing. So here it is. This is the one chord wonder. Here it is. Bam, that's it. Okay? So the notes are C, D, and G. So a 3-note chord. And this is derived from a C major chord. So that's a C major, C, E, G. Okay? Except we're going to do something really fun with this. We do this a lot in pop music. We suspend the third, okay? And there's really 2 ways of doing this. You can do a sus4, that's where you take the third and you move it up, or you can take the third and you can move it down to a D. And that's basically what we're playing, is a C sus2, okay? That's one way. You can also call it a C2. You'll see it both ways in pop music, but a C2 or a C sus2 essentially means the same thing. It's basically like a C chord with a 2 in it. Some people will play it with the third, get a lot of cluster in there. Or you can also just play it like that without the root. But basically for this lesson, the one chord wonder lesson, it's going to just be this one position here, okay? Now we can also spread out the notes. So if you take this chord and you do one inversion up, you get this sound. You get this really neat 4th sound, where you have 2, you have the 5, and then now the root is on the top. This is your 1, okay? So this is a 4th sound. You get these 4th intervals, and it's just a different, more spread sound. So I call this spread position, okay? So we're going to be working with these 2 positions in this lesson. So normal position, spread position, okay? Another way of thinking of this chord, if you're at all familiar with guitar, we have this term called power chords, which is basically like root and 5th. There's no 3rd in the chord. So one way of thinking of this is it's a power chord with an added 2, okay? Power chord with a 2, all right? So that is your essential chord. Now, we're gonna play this over a typical pop chord progression, okay? So in pop music, let's say you're in the key of C major, all right? C, G, C, E, G. That's just a standard C major chord, okay? Well, in pop music, you have chord progressions, and there's a few that are really common. We're gonna be working with 2 here. But basically, a major pop chord progression usually goes like this. Or some variation of that. But essentially, we like to think of these chord progressions as going from, okay, in this example, we're going from the 1 chord, the C, to G. That's our 5 chord in the key of C major. And then we go to like A minor, that's our 6 chord in the key of C. And then our F chord would be the 4 chord, okay? This is a very, very common chord progression that you'll find in pop music. 1, 5, 6, 4, okay? In pop music, you know, sometimes you'll change the order. Sometimes you'll go 1, 4, 6, 5, right? But these are gonna be your most common chords. So how do you take this 1 chord wonder, how do you take this chord here and play it over this pop progression? Well, it's real simple. So we're going to keep that top chord the same, and then the left hand, we're basically going to switch chords underneath this right hand chord. Okay? So check it out. So here's our 1 chord. Okay? Sounds pretty cool. Here's our 5 chord. Ooh, that's sounding cool. Very pop sounding. Okay, check out our 6 chord. Oh, that's gorgeous. I love those harmonies in there. This cluster up here, pulling out some really colorful notes in the chord. And then our 4 chord, very pretty sounding. Okay, and so what's happening here, right? We're not changing the chord on the right hand, just the left hand's changing. Well, we're getting some really neat colors like I just mentioned. You know, in a typical pop chord progression, we use 1, 3, and 5, like on all the chords. So the 1 chord is 1, 3, 5. The 5 chord is 1, 3, 5, right? And this is very typical of classical harmony, okay? But what we're doing here is we're pulling out colorful notes in the chord. And the colorful notes in the chord are basically all of the notes other than the 1, the 3, and the 5. Okay, so like in C, a colorful note typically is the 2, that's the D. Usually the 4 is a colorful note. The 6 and the 7 can be colorful notes, okay? And it kind of depends on the chord that we're playing. But if you can pull out the 2, 4, 6, and 7, these color notes, if you will, then you can get some really pretty sounding chords that don't sound like your typical major minor chords that most people play, okay? So that's kind of what we're doing here, okay? So let's just kind of analyze these chords so you can kind of understand what's happening. So on the first chord, the C chord, we've got the 2, right? And that's how we get that kind of cluster sound here, right? Because there's no 3rd in the chord, we just have that 2. Now when we go to the 5 chord, what's happening here? Well, on the bottom, we've got G and D, okay? And then the right hand, we've got the 4. You see that? There's no 3rd in this chord. It's just the 4th, the 5th of the chord, and the root of the chord, all right? Normally, you'd have a 3rd, but we're going to put that 4th in to get a more colorful sound, okay? Now on the A minor, oh, this is gorgeous. We got a couple really beautiful colors here. Basically, I've got root, which is the 1, the 5th of the chord, and the 3rd of the chord. Now here's the magic. We got the 4 of the chord and the 7 of this chord, right? Because it's an A minor, and the D is the fourth, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the G is the 7, 5, 6, 7. Okay? So we're pulling out some very colorful notes on this A minor chord. Again, if you're playing a typical pop chord progression, you might just play that, right? Just a straight A minor. That sounds great. That's totally cool. But with this particular chord position, you just get this like really, really lovely colors out of this chord. Okay, let's look at the last one. F major, okay? So once again, we've got root fifth on the bottom, that's F C. We've got the fifth doubled up on the right hand, and then we've got a 6, and we've got a 2 on the top. So these are, we call these extensions. The 2, the 4, the 6, and the 6 are, we call extensions, okay? So we're trying to pull these colors out, and on the F chord, we get that 6 and that 2 there. Okay, so one more time. C major. There's our G chord. This is a G sus 4. There's our 4. This is an A minor, but we get a 4 in there, we get a 7 in there. Almost sounds kind of jazzy. And then the F chord. This is an F major with the 6 and the 2, okay? And so you can have some fun with this. You can just play the chords straight. You can play some different chord patterns, different rhythmic patterns, something like break the chord up. Right, or you can do a different pattern. You can do something real poppy. There's like so many cool things you can do with just this one position. I really encourage you to experiment with different rhythms and arpeggiating that position. Okay, so that's the major pop chord progression. 1, 5, 6, 4. Okay? Most pop songs use one of those 4 chords. Okay, next we're going to talk about the minor pop chord progression. And basically the minor pop chord progression is the same chords as the major pop chord progression, except we change the order of the chords. Okay? So what I'll do first is I'll play the minor pop chord progression using straight minor and major chords. So you can kind of hear what it sounds like, and then we'll go ahead and apply this little one chord wonder to make it sound very poppy and colorful. Okay? So here's the minor pop chord progression. Okay? So we're basically reversing the order here. So we're starting on the A minor, the 6th chord, then we go to the F major, this is the 4 chord, the 1 chord, which is C major, and then the 5 chord, which is G major. Okay, these are just standard major and minor chords. Again, we're using thirds for all these chords, right? It's a third interval, that's a third interval, okay? Now, we want to make this more colorful and interesting. So check it out now when we play the 1 chord wonder above that. Check it out. So much more interesting and colorful to play, and it's so cool because we just change that one note, right? We're just taking the third out, we're putting the 2 on the bottom. So once again, A minor, that's our 6th chord. Get those very beautiful colors, the 3rd, the 4, and the 7. Now we get the 5, the 6, and the 2. The 1, the 2, and the 5. And the 4, the 5, and the 1. Okay, so that's the basic idea behind these chords, okay? We're gonna, later on in the lesson, talk about the other chords because there's actually 7 different chords that you can play in the key of C. There's the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1. This encompasses pretty much all of the chords you'll find in pop music, okay? But what we're going to do now is I want to show you what I just showed you, which is the normal position, but now I want to use a spread inversion, okay? Because this is nice, this is kind of a closed, what we call closed position. It's usually closed is less than an octave, but what we're going to do now is we're going to spread it out and use these fourths, okay? We're also going to spread out the left hand. So check it out. We're going to go back to our major pop chord progression using the spread position and check out the magic. This is what this sounds like. So huge chords, and we're actually doing the same thing we were doing before. We're using the exact same chords, we're just really spreading it out, okay? So as you may have noticed, the right hand stays the same, D, G, C. We play this over all the chords. And then the left hand, this is where the magic comes. We're gonna be using these tenths, okay? So a tenth is basically root, fifth, third. So you basically put the third on the top, and that interval there is a tenth interval if you count up from C, okay? Now, a lot of people have trouble reaching this, very common, and if you do have trouble reaching this, what I recommend is just playing root and fifth, okay? So all of the chords that we have a tenth on, just play root and fifth if you can't reach the tenth. Another option is to roll it. Let's say you can't reach that together, you can roll this. You can do like, okay? And with the chord, it sounds like, and the timing there is basically like you hit the right hand chord with the E, right? So that left hand, that CG comes in right before you hit the chord. Okay, so you can practice that. I like to hit the whole chord together, so that there it is, okay? So this is our C2 or C sus2. Okay, now for the G, gorgeous. So we've got root, fifth, tenth, G, D, B. There's our fifth again, there's our root, and then our sus4. It kind of has a little clashing sound, or it has a rub to it. Sometimes we like to use this rub in playing. We don't want all the chords to be, you know, major, minor. We want notes to kind of push up against one another, okay? That's our 5 chord. This becomes our 6 chord. This is gorgeous. This is probably my favorite chord here, because we've basically got root, fifth, third, and then the 4 butted up to the 3rd. Makes a really nice sound there with the 7 and the 3rd. And then the 4 chord is there, just lovely. A lot of 4th intervals. There's a 4th, there's a 4th, and there's a 4th. Okay? F, C, A, D, G, C. Okay? Let's go ahead and play these together. So our C chord, that's the 1. Let's go to the 5 chord. Absolutely gorgeous. There's our 6 chord, and then the 4 chord. And just like we did earlier, we can, you know, play some different patterns, okay? So you can do something like we did earlier, which is like, and kind of what I'm doing here is I'm just hitting the bottom and then I'm just going top, top. Or you can arpeggiate it, you can do like, right? Have fun with this. Try different patterns. Experiment. You can't go wrong doing rhythmic patterns, okay? So that's the major pop chord progression using left hand tenths and the spread position. We're also going to do the minor chord progression like we did earlier, okay? So here we go, starting on A minor. That's our 6th chord. Now let's go to 4. This is our F chord. We're using all the same notes we did earlier. We're just changing the order. And then our 1 chord sounds absolutely gorgeous. I love these tenths in the left hand. And then the G. Okay? I'll go ahead and demonstrate this. If you're having trouble with the tenths, it's totally okay. Just use fifths. So there's your 5th sound on the A. There's the 4 chord. There's the 1 chord. And the 5 chord. And you'll actually notice, hey, that sounds really cool. It sounds very similar. You're basically accomplishing the same effect. That's very close to that. In fact, on the A minor, if you pull the C out here, well, look, you got the C up here. So you're just doubling the same note, okay? So a very, very similar effect if you just use root and 5th on the left hand. Hey, thanks for watching this preview course. If you want the full-length lesson, you can get it on pianowithjonny.com. And we have lots of other piano lessons and sheet music for beginner, intermediate, and advanced players. We got stuff for everyone, so be sure to check that out as well. And that's it for now. I enjoyed this lesson with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.